Hello, friends. Happy Friday night. This is another quick video. I've got more more produced material in the pipeline, which is basically in my head and some notes. So that is coming, and I will work on it as I have time. But I had this thought, the barrage of comments after Dan's video. And again, I haven't read all the comments, but I got the sense that people think that if you're presenting a case for something, if you're making an argument, and you leave out details that don't support your argument, that is somehow a form of lying. So I wanted to take the temperature in the room, which my room here, you guys, is filled with a lot of people who don't agree with me, who are kind of on the lost civilization train. You come here because you're angry or whatever. I want to know, because this is an honest question. I'm wondering if this is where some of the misunderstanding and the anger is coming from. If you go to court, there are rules. There are rules about what's the responsibility of the prosecutor, what's the responsibility of the judge, what's the responsibility of the jury, what the defense attorney is supposed to do, what rights the client has, and so on and so forth. And I'm not saying that these discussions have to follow a courtroom model, but in any kind of discussion, like if you can't agree on the rules of decorum and what's inside and outside of bounds, it makes it hard to have a discussion. So I'm wondering if I said to you, and I'm not saying I believe this, but I'm just wondering hypothetically, if I said to you that I think my job is to make the best case I possibly can against a lost civilization, I want to fight tooth and claw with those who insist that there was such a civilization. What if I said that I think a parallel for what I do is to be found in the work of an attorney defending a client in a court of law? Say my client is the mainstream view of the past, and it's my responsibility to persuade the jury, the public, that no lost civilization ever existed. And since the prosecution, pseudoscientists, naturally seek to make the opposite case as effectively as they can, I have to be equally effective and, where necessary, equally ruthless. So I'm going to be selective with the evidence that I present. And of course, I'm selective. It's not my job to show my client in a bad light. So if I'm going to make an argument for the mainstream view of the human past, I'm not necessarily going to tell you exculpatory facts. It's not my job to do that. It's the other side's job to do that. In a courtroom, at least this is how the American legal system works. It's the burden of proof is on the prosecutor, the one making the case. The defense attorney doesn't have to do anything. He or she can just sit there and say absolutely nothing, because the burden of proof is on the prosecutor. However, a good defense attorney would try to poke holes in the prosecutor's case in order to convince the jury that the prosecutor is not meeting that burden of proof. There are certain rules about evidence sharing. Like if the prosecution has evidence that would exonerate the person who's on trial, they have to provide that to the defense attorney. They cannot hold that back. I'm not sure that it works the other way. I'm not sure the defense has to provide all the information, because it's not on them to do the information gathering. That's on the prosecutor. They have that burden. Anyway, what I'm asking, I guess, to cut this off, is that an appropriate way to have the discussion? Am I responsible for giving you all the facts and evaluating them all, or am I supposed to be making the case? Let me know what you think, because this idea kind of seems to be out there that it's my responsibility to consider all the sides. It's almost like I'm more of in the judge role, and I'm supposed to call them down the middle rather than being on one side or the other. So what kind of roles are we supposed to be playing here? This is a different way of having a discussion than we do in science amongst ourselves, where there is peer review, and when somebody writes a paper, we do expect them to talk about all of the factors that might weaken their conclusion or their argument, we can call people on that and say, well, you didn't consider X, Y, and Z in your paper. You need to discuss why those are important or not, or whatever. That happens in the scientific discourse. Is that supposed to happen here? Is that supposed to happen in these kind of discussions? What's the mechanism? How do we see that? Because we're kind of in new territory. This is not any way that these kind of discussions have played out before, so we're kind of in an interesting spot. So I'm curious as to what you guys see are the roles of people trying to get at what really happened. Do each of us have a different hand to play here, and what is our goal? And I will tell you, my overarching meta goal is to get the story of the human past correct. I think a lot of this pseudoscience stuff is harmful because it does a great disservice to the story of the human past, and it tends to repeat things that we know are incorrect. And a lot of those things have a pretty nasty history. So that's where I'm coming at it in my interest. So that's why I see people say things that are bullshit or that I think are bullshit, and I call them on it with as much time and effort as I can afford to put in. And believe me, if I called out and if I made a video for everything that I heard one of these alternate history people say that I thought was bullshit, that's all I would do. I wouldn't have time for my family or a job or anything else because there's a lot of bullshit out there. Does that mean it's all bullshit? No, it doesn't. Does that mean I'm never wrong? No, of course, I get things wrong. Am I supposed to be the impartial arbiter, or am I supposed to be presenting a case? Does it work the same for the alternative side? Are they supposed to be presenting a complete story with facts that support their argument as well as things that might refute or weaken that argument? Or are they allowed to just be selective and just pick only the things that support their argument and not tell you about things that weaken their argument or even falsify it? Are we playing by the same rules here? Does science have to do one thing, but pseudoscience gets to do something completely different? Let me know what you think.